see what would happen, and in the midst of their separation that lasted a long time, almost 5 years, they decided they would allow one another to date other people. And so it was 5 years into this painful separation that Chip, the husband, was in the hospital with kidney failure. And with his health that was deteriorating rapidly, his soon-to-be ex-wife came to his aid. Now, she knew that he was dating somebody else, and it just didn't matter to her. And though he was in a relationship with somebody else at the time, she said this. She said, he was still my husband. There was no way I could walk around with 2 kidneys and he had none. It was the right thing to do. And so she agreed to donate one of her kidneys to the man that she was separated to and ultimately getting a divorce from. And she did it with no strings attached, no written agreement. They weren't going to bring it into the divorce proceedings at all. And after the surgery happened, a funny thing happened. As they were recovering, both of them in the hospital, you know what happened? They fell back in love, so to speak. Chip thought to himself, why would I want to date someone else when I have a woman who would give part of herself so I can keep living? So he puts an end immediately to this other relationship and asks her to come back home, and they reconcile their relationship. This October they will be married 29 years now. See, I think it came through this act of sacrifice that transcended all of their struggles and all of their problems. A spirit of sacrifice ought to be at the heart of our marriages. Now, this is at the very heart of what Paul's going to be getting in 2 directives. One, we read both of them. They come in verses 18 and 19, and one's going to be directed to the female spouse, the other's going to be directed to the male spouse. And the first directive of sacrifice is there in verse 18. Here it is, ladies. Here's the first directive, and it's for you. Wife, sacrifice by yielding. We get that from verse 18. Again, wives, submit to your husbands as is fitting in the Lord. I know what this is. Submit, as we see it there, is a powder keg word, and it summons all kinds of images of the cavemen dragging their wives by their hair. We get perspective of wives waiting on husbands' hand and foot, or the husband walking in front and the wife walking 3 steps behind, which, by the way, happens in my marriage. It's only because I'm a foot taller than Jennifer, my stride is a little bit longer, right? But not by command. Listen, these images of submission are not what I think Paul has in mind. In fact, these images of the men being superior and lording over his place of authority over the wife is really a misunderstanding. It's not really a proper picture of what marriage should be. So what is the image that Paul has in his mind when he says to submit? And in fact, that big bad word of submission is not as callous as we may think it is. The word submit literally means to place under. But it's not the husband here who is making this happen. This is a directive that is given to the wife. She does the placing. So this is a voluntary action that he's calling for her to do. So wives, submission is your decision. You voluntarily place yourself under your husband's authority. You are yielding to his leadership. Now most people think that submission means that the husband is more significant than the wife, that he's superior, she's inferior, but that is not the case. Submission does not mean that the wife is a slave. It does not mean that she is under her husband's command. She is simply obeying the Lord's command. And you see there in verse 18, wives, submit to your husbands as is fitting in